anda ketahui sebelum anda keluar rumah. Paparan terkini, kupasan mendalam. Kami temani anda di waktu pagi untuk hari yang lebih ceria dan produktif. Gigi Ahmad, Afizi Azaman, Hakim Rahman, Hafizi Rosli dan Naila Huda. Semuanya di Awani Pagi.
Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Now, of course, the most anticipated news today was the announcement by Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin that the MCO would be extended for 2 weeks until the 28th of April. The Prime Minister said that Malaysians should be prepared to make long-term changes to our lifestyles and habits. Now, this means that schools may remain closed and for us to be prepared not to balik kampung for Raya this year. Muhyiddin also said that more economic sectors will be allowed to reopen in stages, and a list of those industries has been released by MITI. Sharaad, what do we know so far of these industries that are on this list?
Melisa, one thing's for sure, if you're used to a Friday night going to the pub, watching a movie, or going to the gym, or engaging in some sort of retail therapy, that's not on the books, not yet anyway. So, you know, those industries, including things like travel and tourism, nothing's changed for them. But we do see a list. Now, it's quite an extensive list, Melisa. You know, that includes things like barbers and hardware stores and laundromats, or at least full-service ones, and so on and so forth. Also, smaller contractors are on the list. And then, of course, all these other kinds of major industries that are linked to exports. Now, that kind of leads us to a discussion, as, you know, as MITI had suggested, there are 4 considerations for them when it came to this list, and that has to do with sectors that are important in the global value chain, high multiplier effect. I mean, it's sort of the resonance within the ecosystem was great. Its impact on SMEs and their sustainability. And lastly, the size of the workforce of that particular sector. All these were the 4 main considerations when they drew up that list.
But also, those are going to be the considerations when they approve for these businesses to be allowed to work under the MCO. Because apparently, according to MITI, if your business falls under the category or the sectors that have been allowed to operate in this phase of the MCO, you still need to apply for a written approval from MITI that will allow you to operate your business once again. So again, these considerations all coming into play for MITI to allow those businesses.
And because there's already chatter on the social media about this particular provision, the requirement rather, that you apply for permission to continue. This, because, is going to impact different sectors and different scales of operations differently, right? So, for instance, are barbers expected to apply to MITI for the right to, in fact, open their shops? And I think the question of communicating this to the ground, to all those small, big and medium size, is going to be crucial in the smooth running of this particular stage of the MCO.
I just want to add on that note about barbers, Sharaad. Don't get too happy about getting a haircut just yet, because apparently the only services allowed for hair salons and barbers is just for hair cutting. None of the additional services will be allowed.
Ones that I might actually use, like getting a shave. Yes, thank you very much for noting that I don't have hair, Melisa.
Right,
okay.
Well, let's take a look at some other news. Now, Defence Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob today said that the government views seriously the spread of misinformation on COVID-19 and that Putrajaya will take action against anyone involved in the spreading of false news, regardless of their position. However, I do hope that the government makes a clear distinction between what it calls fake news and dissenting opinions. What about you, Sharaad?
Yeah, and this comes hot on the heels of calls, for instance, by a veteran UMNO leader to have Dr. Musa Nordin, because, very famously, warning us on the perils of not taking stronger action, for him to be sacked.
Right.
And, that's very interesting, because what that is about is not fake news, clearly. It's about differences of opinion, about differences of emphasis on looking at what's happening. And, of course, we know that globally, this is a steep learning curve for so many experts, and experts themselves are not of a single opinion.
Right.
So having all those opinions out there, a very good thing, not for us, I think, at this point in time, to suppress differences of opinion.
Yeah. And I completely agree. I mean, I understand that this is a time of, increased tensions. Tensions are heightened, people's anxieties are heightened. So, to be even more careful about what we say, about what we forward on social media and messaging apps, completely, that's a really great, piece of advice for us to be vigilant and mindful about what we do say and forward. However, that doesn't stop us from being critical, from pointing out errors and gaps in perhaps actions and approaches by authorities. And I think that's also part not just of the media, but also of a vigilant public.
Yeah, Melisa, one of the expectations, the guidelines, as it were, around fake news is that it doesn't reduce trust in government. Now, that's rather problematic as a provision, because being critical is not about trust. It's about saying that there are different options out there and you need to weigh things up. But, of course, those who want no dissent might read that as an attempt to undermine what government has decided, because ultimately, at the end of the day, somebody has to make a decision one way or the other. The options on the table. Is that a bad thing? I mean, we really need to be very clear about what we mean by fake news and what we mean by dissenting opinions.
Exactly, and what we mean by poor reporting, poor journalism, as well as false information. It came to my attention today, there was a news report about claiming that residents of the Selangor mansion, the place that has been locked down, apparently residents of that mansion had been throwing rubbish and urine-filled bags to soldiers, and that's why the soldiers were forced to wear helmets instead of the berets. And this misinformation has been refuted, has been denied by the armed forces, saying that is not true. So I think, we have to be, again, as I said, be careful about
what we read. Why was that report even there in the first place?
And using very xenophobic language, I might say, Sharaad.
And a single source unnamed. Again, it might be actually something that predates the MCO. The xenophobic kind of baiting, foreign worker baiting that goes on in some of our media, long established tradition for some outlets, now just finding another way of expressing itself during this particular crisis.
All right, okay, we're going to take a quick break now. But after this, we'll find out what the medical experts are saying about the MCO extension. So stay tuned to consider this.
Untuk patuh kepada perintah kawalan pergerakan yang telah diumumkan Perdana Menteri. Malah Ketua Menteri kita Abang Johari pun madah jangan keluar rumah mesti perlu. Kerana COVID-19 tu bukan main-main. Ia adalah pandemik yang dah meragut banyak nyawa di serata dunia. masuk di negeri kita. Jadi nasihat kami sekali lagi, ibuah ngelayo, diam kenah di rumah. Kerana nyawa kita berharga, nyawa mak bapak kita berharga, nyawa anak-anak kita berharga. Diingatkan sekali lagi supaya diam benar-benar, jangan ngelayo, mu nak ke kedai pergi seorang-seorang, jangan ngangkut anak bini. Sekian, semoga kita dilindungi daripada virus pembunuh ini.
Assalamualaikum semua, kami Dayang, kami just nak pesan dan kita orang semua arah-arah time tu dalam situasi tu kita ikut arahan kerajaan untuk stay di rumah, jangan keluar, nak keluar pun atas urusan penting ataupun siapa dielakkan lagi. So, stay home, stay healthy, semua tu sebentar je. Muah.
Assalamualaikum abang-abang, adik-kakak di Sarawak. Kami Awang Nazim dari Astro AWANI ingin mengingatkan kita semua untuk patuh kepada perintah kawalan pergerakan yang telah
season, and I'm thinking that's at least until June. So what was the basis for urging for such a prolonged period of MCO?
Yeah, so let's remind ourselves that the main objective of MCO is really to reduce the total number of new cases of infection with COVID-19. And one of the key elements to reducing the number of new infections is the implementation of social distancing. And we all know we'll need to get that with activities, this social distancing will fail. So for this reason, they can propose that the MCO or even mass gatherings and non-essential interstate travel should be really continued beyond Hari Raya Aidilfitri, taking into consideration other celebrations such as Gawai and also the Harvest Festival, which will follow in June. And this is really to ensure that or enforce the implementation of the social distancing. So although there are signs that the MCO has worked or is working based on lowering of the trajectory on the number of new cases, which was forecasted to be higher. But what we actually will be seeing is that a premature withdrawal of this MCO restrictions will potentially undo all the good that has been achieved all this while for the past few weeks.
Dr. Rosmawati, is it conceivable that people take responsibility for themselves, that you could lift the MCO and people could actually practice those principles of social distancing and so on and so forth without the necessity of roadblocks and lockdowns and in fact, closures of businesses? Isn't that possible?
I mean, responsible behavior should already start from the beginning of this MCO anyway, from the 18th of March. But really when we looked about the Balik Kampung exodus, and that happened even on the 17th of March when it was first announced that the MCO will take place, there is real risk of spreading the virus. And particularly now we are talking about people going back to other households in the community and to their parents or grandparents and older population. And what about not just the risk of spreading, but the risk of increased mortality or the death rate because of the increased risk of death in this older age group. So I think, yes, we all should be responsible. We all should be able to adhere to social distancing, but not everyone will be doing the same. And if everyone thinks that they can avoid the crowds at R&R, I think that will not be something that we can avoid because everyone will have the same idea.
Dr. Rosmawati, are you disappointed then the announcement of just a 2-week extension, not a month long, not a month and a half? Are you disappointed?
No. I think what has been done is from the beginning is every 2 weeks, and that really is okay because this is reassessing the situation after each faith, and this actually has been done in a scientific manner, looking at the data so far. And looking at the data, it is positive. But what we know that is the second objective must also be really achieved. That means not to have this exponential rise in the number of cases suddenly that will overwhelm the capacity of the health system or hospitals. And that's the main reason deaths occur in places where this large number of infections or new infections is happening.
Okay.
And that is beyond the health system capacity. And we do not want to see this happening.
So we want to flatten the curve for sure. But
Exactly.
the government has chosen to extend the MCO in 2-week increments. What do you think is the likelihood of another extension? I mean, I'm looking at Wuhan. Wuhan saw a lockdown of 76 days. That's 11 weeks. Are we likely to see another extension?
Oh, yes, definitely. We are likely. And I think what we also want to emphasize, and it was also emphasized by the Prime Minister, that we were going to see this as a long haul. And I think the practice of social distancing is something that we must get accustomed to. And I think he's been referring to as the new norm. And definitely that is something that we must consider in our day-to-day practice now.
Right.
And the really certain behaviors like hugging or even shaking hands is no longer a norm in this current situation.
So what do you think that will look like, Dr. Rosma? I mean, celebrating festivals in the era of COVID-19, what would that look like? You said no non-essential interstate travel, no longer shaking hands, no longer hugging. What do you envision this future to look like?
Yes, we still celebrate festivities. This is Sabat Raya, we can celebrate Gawai, but it will be in circumstances, in our own family situation. But remember, we can use technology to actually get to the others, and I think that should suffice for the Burman. I think people would understand the limitations here, and no one wants to have the risk of having or the spreading to their loved ones, and the guilt that will happen if there's such infection spread will be a lot something which we will like to avoid altogether. And definitely it will be still not going to be the same, of course, but there will be some form of celebration, not none, but in a modified manner.
Dr. Rosmawati, I mean, I'm trying to find a right way of putting this. There are diseases all over, and people die every day of all kinds of diseases. Will there be a point at which, with COVID-19, there will be an acceptable level of infection, an acceptable level of death?
Yes, that is a good question. When will this infection be under control? No one has the answer. But in reality, we know that it will only be under control when there is presence of what is known as herd immunity, also known as the community immunity or group protection. And this will happen when many people in the community has become immune to the infection. We know now that it's not happening yet because it's a new infection altogether. So there are two ways where this immunity or herd immunity can happen is when many people have contracted the disease in time and built an immune response, what is known as a natural immunity. The second is that when many people are vaccinated against disease to achieve immunity, but sadly, the vaccines are not yet available. And even when it's available, there might be challenges in getting the production to the level that people can get to, but we hope that that will happen. And when a large percentage of the population becomes immune to this COVID-19, then the spread of this disease will definitely slow down or stop. So until we have a vaccine, until a lot of people, and we don't want to have a lot of people infected at the same time now, we do want to still spread the infection. We can't avoid it, but we have to reduce the trajectory. And that's when we said that this is trying to flatten the curve, yes. But really control is when a certain number of people are already had the disease affected. vaccinated.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. Appreciate your time on this, Dr. Rosmawati. Now, we're going to take a quick break on Consider This, but after this, take a closer look at what this extended MCO will mean for businesses. Stay tuned.
Diam kenah di rumah. Kerana nyawa kita berharga. Nyawa mak bapak kita berharga. Nyawa anak-anak kita berharga. Diingatkan sekali lagi supaya diam benar-benar. Jangan ngelayu. Mu nak ke kedai, pergi seorang-seorang. Jangan ngangkut anak bini. Sekian. Semoga kita dilindungi daripada virus pembunuh ini.
Ujang mak abah duduk ontok-ontok ke rumah, tak ada sebab nak.
Thank you for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Now, along with the extension of the MCO to the 28th of April, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin today also announced that more economic sectors will be allowed to reopen in stages. A list was then released by MITI of industries that will be allowed to operate under the MCO. These include hair salons, hardware shops and full-service laundries. Now, will this be enough to keep some businesses from folding under the MCO? Joining us on the line now, we have Tan Sri Leong, President of the National Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Malaysia. Good evening, welcome to the show. Now, according to the statement by MITI, companies which are allowed to operate must submit their applications online and then obtain a written approval from the ministry. Do you see this as being overly bureaucratic, that this will add to the process, which will impact the ability of businesses, particularly small businesses, to kickstart their operations?
Well, you're talking about the application. Yes. Application through the MITI for the companies to operate. I think it is important to do so because, as a matter of fact, we've been working very closely with MITI in terms of getting the list for the application for companies to be able to operate during the MCO time. And we are glad, in fact, that MITI just announced this list of possible economic industry that we can operate with these conditions for the sectors, which I think Sharaad has mentioned that the 3 or 4 actual conditions which is important in the global value chain, activities of economic sectors, which is high value added multipliers, the impact of the sustainability of SMEs.
Right. But Tan Sri, do you see this as being bureaucratic for the very small businesses? I mean, do you envision barbers going up, applying online and getting a written application from MITI?
But I think this is important. But I think this is important because due to the fact that we need to know which company that is going in, so that in the end of the day, the SOP, it is important that we make sure that the company is able to operate in the very appropriate and proper manner, so that we can have this COVID-19 chain to be broken, so that we will make sure that the public health and the health of the safety of the workers is being ensured. Yeah. And anyway, the Chambers of Commerce, together with the MITI, we actually set up a chat group. They're working together as a team day and night, very hard. We have received thousands of applicants from our members, and we get that sorted out and submit it to MITI. And so far, I would say that MITI has been very, very efficient working together with us.
Right, Tan Sri, could you tell us who's been left out and why they have been left out? What kinds of businesses have been left out of this list, and what kind of time frame are we looking at for them to be allowed to be on this list?
Well, I think eventually we hope all businesses will be able to get on their business as soon as possible. But looking at the current situation, Chamber of Commerce, in fact, has proposed 3 major sectors other than essential economies or sectors, which is manufacturing, construction, as well as the mining to start first, due to the fact that these 3 is like what MITI has just mentioned, the principle of manufacturing. Actually, we have the supply chain that needs to go to global, as well as SMEs a lot are in the manufacturing. And the construction, in fact, affecting these 140 other important sectors. So we think that it is important to have this manufacturing and construction to be to start first. And the rest, I guess, we have to slowly, if we are able to have this SOP, which is ensuring the public health and this safety of the workers is being, the procedure is being followed. I think the rest we will then slowly discuss with MITI and one by one to get it open.
Right. Tan Sri, are businesses and factories, particularly manufacturing factories, ready to reorganize their production line to observe these SOPs you mentioned, to make sure that the health and safety of their workers are maintained, are taken care of?
I think it is a must and not a choice for factories and businesses to adopt best practices and the guidelines and the SOP that's being set for the public health.
But are they ready, though? But are they ready, though?
Well, I guess, as I mentioned, there's not an option. You know, if they are not ready, I think then we should not let them open. And this is a new normal. So SOP and this SOP this is actually unprecedented pandemic. So, and of course, I foresee some of the SMEs may face some challenges to comply with these SOPs. They might not necessarily ready, but I can tell you that. In fact, it is not that difficult to be ready yourself. You know, so with this, I would like to urge the SMEs especially to be ready yourself. First of all, to set up your maybe crisis management team or SOP team to prepare and to establish your action plan in order to have your company be able to operate. During SOP or even during MCO or even post MCO, and then the plan for the work plan, staff planning, and meanwhile, of course, with that SOP plans, obviously, you will have to then ready to prepare for the necessities, for instance, masks, gloves, sanitizer, or even thermometer, and of course the workplace arrangement and so on and so forth. And communication is very important, I think. Currently, I think while at home, I think the employers should take these opportunities actually to communicate with employees. In fact, by using technologies, it can be Zoom or other alternatives like WebEx, Microsoft Teams, or even Tencent meetings. You can actually carry it out even like town hall. They brief your staff and workers to be prepared. To go back to the workplace in the new way of working.
Right. Tan Sri, I mean, one of the things that seemed sort of missing on the list, of course, was the large retail sector. And I'm thinking, of course, we had like opticians are allowed and so on and so forth. But the bulk of retailers don't seem to be on that list. Do you see a serious problem there?
Yeah, I think retailers have been facing tremendous pressure at this juncture. But I'm sure the government and also Ministry of Health must have made their consideration at this juncture. But however, we will then continue to liaise with MITI so that these retailers can be gradually open up. But by looking at the initial first batch of essential sectors that have been opened, so far, the companies or the businesses has been actually doing very well in terms of complying the SOPs. So I believe the retailers can learn from that, and then we can sit down and discuss, and slowly we have these retailers to be open.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us tonight, Tan Sri. Appreciate your time. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me, Sharaad Kuttan. Have a great weekend, folks. And to those celebrating, happy Easter. Thank you for watching and good night.